They are trainers who are currently working in the job, or I do have an antique with me. Because one of the people we have here is my big brother, my wonderful big brother Kim. So just going to go for because Neil and Woody. But Neil, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you want from this particular blue light special, what you think is important to get across or discuss.
Yeah, good morning everybody. As an ex-fire service blue light driver, my biggest point that I'd like to get across to all ADIs and the general public is trying to get the people to think about what the emotions and the experiences that the drivers are actually going through when approaching situations. So it's looking at the size of the vehicle, looking at what actually the vehicle is doing, and thinking about how they could better leave a way for the vehicle to get through rather than just stopping, to be quite honest. I don't know if that's what everybody else thinks.
No, brilliant, brilliant. Terry, what are your thoughts?
It's Sunday. Don't have thoughts on Sunday. That's the whole point of Sundays.
Yeah.
If you're going to force me and twist my arm, I'm just really interested to know what I don't know, actually.
Good.
That's
I like that.
For me.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Definitely what I was looking for. Sammy, your thoughts?
Well, I'm just looking forward to hearing what the blue light trainers have got to say, and I'm looking forward to hearing their experiences. So putting the shoe on the other foot, and just learning from them, really. See if there's anything that I'm missing in my training.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sammy. Kev?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One, to see how we can help them, but then also how can what they do help the general public and us in the way they train and what they're looking for as well, because that's quite interesting, I feel. I know I've spoke to a few of them before, so it's interesting to see the two-way connection that we can help each other.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got Carol, Ed and Woody. Kim, I'm going to come on to you in a minute, just in a second, because what I actually want from this is, in talking to Kim over the years, my brother, in talking to Woody recently, Ed and definitely Carol, there's a big gap in what drivers are doing, and there are too many crashes happening because of the confusion where people haven't got enough. They haven't got enough information, and I think we as ADIs currently are the only ones who can try and start to stop that. We can't do an instant fix. None of us can do an instant fix, but why can't we at least make the effort? That's what I'm interested in, is let's make the effort as a bunch of ADIs in the UK to change, to start the change, so that people have more information and really do think about it before they take out evasive action and do all the things that they do. Kim, how many years have you had blue light experience?
Well, good morning, everybody. I served in the Hertfordshire Constabulary from 1971 to 2004. So they did have cars in those days, contrary to popular belief. I did time on just routine panda car work initially, and then several stints on traffic with what in those days were high performance cars and motorbikes. And then I spent the last 10 years of my service in riding around in a helicopter for a living. So I got to see a variety of what you guys are trying to address, both as a frightened police driver on a shout, being confronted by somebody doing what I didn't think they were going to do, to just seeing it from the air during their pursuits and things like that. So quite a few oddball things that we can chuck in. But just to say, this is not a new problem, guys. It's been around since I first switched on a blue light in 1971. So that's it. That's my sort of stance.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Kim. Carol, similar experiences with being a trainer, because you've done a lot. Do you want to speak? Oh, right.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yes, it's quite an interesting subject, and I think it's one that's very important. So for me, I've been a police instructor for 8 years, and I also do ambulance training, and I also do train the trainer. So I actually train people to become emergency response driving instructors. So for me, looking at it from a trainer's perspective, I think ADIs need to understand the thoughts and feelings of the learners, and also that of the drivers of the ambulances or the police cars and what they're actually going through, to know how to react at traffic lights, especially. Do they mount curbs or don't they mount curbs? And another one is also the solid white lines, what to do when they're actually approaching solid white lines, because a lot don't know what to do, they just bang on the brakes. So from that perspective, it's trying to just to understand the general awareness, so they can raise their awareness of the students and also of the ADI as well, and to give them a better knowledge, and also what are the exemptions that people that the emergency services have, because a lot of people don't know what the exemptions are.
Yeah,
So that's quite important for me, all of that in one package now, just to put those basic ideas of what they need to do.
brilliant. Hopefully Kev's done a checklist so we can make sure we've done all that by the end.
Sorry.
No, it's vital. It's really important, Carol. But this is why we're doing this blue light special, because we can imagine, but we don't know from your perspectives what life is like. So that's the value of this. Thanks, Carol. Woody, then I'll come to you, Ed. Woody, because chatting with you, make sure you unmute yourself. Brilliant.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to echo exactly what Carol's just said, because one of the things I've noticed, I've only been in the blue light driver training for just over a year now. Can't believe it's been a year, but I've had a lot of experience in that year. And I think what's really obvious is that people don't understand the regulations that we have to abide by. And that causes us a lot of problems. So when we're training, like Carol's mentioned, solid white lines, we are also have to abide by law. So I don't think people realise that, and I've had several cases where we've been going along solid white lines where ADIs have been winding the window down and trying to get us to go past them, and they're driving at sort of 30 miles an hour, and we can't do that. So there's a clue.
That's
really.
it. So from your perspective, there's also a gap with some ADI knowledge, ADI, PDI, and the rest of us. And we do make genuine mistakes. It's no judgment, but we do need to change it. And you're right, Woody. I'm really glad you brought it out.
Thank you.
Really glad you brought it out. Ed?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Nice to be invited onto something like this to get some valid points across that we regularly come across in training for blue lights. So I'm involved with police driver training. And I think there's one thing that I'd like to get across is the difference between what police can do and what ambulance can do. There's a bit of a difference between the two responses. So there's that. And the other thing I think that's a really important thing is that, particularly from the police side and potentially a little bit from the ambulance, is tandem responding. So that's where you've got two or more vehicles in response to something. And it's just ADIs need to get across the point is look for that second vehicle or that third vehicle, because if you get your first responder going through with the ambulance, you might have the look out for the ambulance coming, or if it's a major event, you could have two ambulances going to a job. Same with the police if it's a major event, and those could be coming from different directions. So you'll hear one siren coming from one way, you might get another set of sirens coming the other way. So it's just getting those sort of points across. Be aware. It's raising awareness of what you're actually doing, and get people to take more observation around, because people just pull out. And the numerous times that we get very close shaves when we're tandem responding, especially where people just pull straight back out after the first vehicle's gone through. So there's a few points there that I'd like to get across.
That's it. It's difficult for everyone, because I remember having conversations with Carol, because we chat on the phones, but it's the second vehicle. Sometimes the second vehicle doesn't have an audible siren on at that time. For whatever reason, they have I don't know Ed, if you guys leave, and that's the differences. But I know often blue light drivers are turning their sirens off.
Yeah, there's
on
different
occasion.
reasons why different forces turn off, or different services turn off their warning systems. I know for the ambulance, if they've got high risk, I remember when I had a heart attack, they did a silent run because of the stress factor. For when we're responding in police, there could be numerous different reasons why we don't have any audible equipment on, or even blue lights. So we're doing what we call a covert run or silent run. So there's different reasons out there. And it's just members of the public sometimes aren't aware that we can respond to something without the lights on. They think that we have to have blue lights on to be responding. That's not always the case.
No, that's right. Yeah, thanks, Ed. Because I know once we get started, it's going to flow really quickly, and there's going to be a quick fire of information. But one of the things I would like to point out is the fact that we don't have control in that moment as a driver, and as a new driver especially. When you're driving along and you hear that siren, the first reaction is not a thought. The first reaction is a feeling and a panic or a stress or is an emotional reaction. It's fight, flight, freeze or flock. Those kind of adrenaline factors come in. So that's the first thing we need to address, and I think that's what Carol was talking about. Yes, the drivers themselves, you know what shout you're on the way to, but us as drivers have got that. I mean, it happened to me 2 days ago. Obviously, I've been very conscious because of this scheduled platform. I've been very conscious when I hear blue lights of my reaction, and it is that physical reaction first. And I think that's what we need to get the drivers to think about. It is an emotional response first, and that's why sometimes all of us make the wrong choices. I think. Does everyone agree with what I'm saying? Because you're all muted. There's no nodding. Yeah.
I'd just like to just come back to something that I've just seen in the notes. Actually, it's just going back off track a little bit. Keith Layton's put something. Normally there are more than one note. In Notts Police, we use 2 different terms on police tandem responses. That's correct in what's being said there. But when you're the second car, it's sometimes hard to hear what tone the first car's on. So there are times it's a change of tone that actually people respond to, rather than just having the 2 separate tones. It's just keeping those tones different, because if in some situations where you create a gap, you can't hear the other car. So, but it is a good point that 2 different tones should be used as possible.
It is. So Ed, if you could, because we've got the crew are monitoring the chat, so they'll alert me.
Right.
Because otherwise it gets really confusing, and we kind of lose that there's a little bit of a thread here. So I appreciate you doing it, but it can get confusing and it can get really disjointed. Are there any questions that we need to go, crew? Is there anything we need from Facebook or anything as of yet?
I've done loads of notes already.
Brilliant. So the first thing on the notes that Carol brought up was it's thinking about the thoughts and feelings of the driver of the blue lights. I think one of the things she mentioned. Is there anything that, because let's go through the facts of it. Let's go through the facts. Who wants to, put your hands up please, who wants to talk about the what we need to do with regards to the white lines and the things that Carol said? So we had the white lines. Terry was first. That means no one can steal Terry's thunder. Where's Di? Terry, go for it first.
I misunderstood. I misunderstood, Fiona. I thought we were saying who wants to hear what Carol's got to say about it. Sorry.
Oh, right. The blue light thing. So Carol first, and then we'll come to Ed and Woody, because they know what the limitations are. White lines, Carol. What do you want from drivers on white lines?
Okay, on solid white lines. If you look in your mirror and you see an ambulance or a police car coming up behind you, and it's, say for example, it's a really windy road, what we want you to do is to keep going, because we don't actually have an exemptions for solid white lines. The only time that we can cross a solid white line is when the vehicle has stopped that we want to pass, or if it's to overtake a cyclist maintenance vehicle or a horse going less than 10 miles an hour. So other than that, the ambulance driver or police driver, they should hold right back, switch the sirens off so they don't bully the driver. But not everybody does that because they have different emotions. So as with drivers, what they tend to do is stop on the bend, and then they're stopping the ambulance or the police car or the fire engine from proceeding. So the best thing that they can do is to actually keep going, because they keep going, we keep going. So that's the way that to facilitate that emergency, you know, in the safest progressive time, really, on that.
Brilliant. Thanks,
And
Carol.
Can
So
I
that's
just
the blue-
add to that, would you advise that you go up to the speed limit when you're on, say, on a 60 limit road, that you would drive at that limit?
Well, that again, that depends on the environment that you're driving in, doesn't it? So you always drive at a speed where you can stop within the distance you can see to be clear. So that's at the discretion of the driver. So you never put yourself in danger or anybody else. So you proceed at the limit that's safe, and then when it is safe to pull over, like a lay-by, or if it is safe to do so, just pull over, but keep moving if you can. And then if it's, we can then overtake at the appropriate time.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Carol. That's really nice and clear. Terry, I'll come to you in a minute. Ed or Woody, do you guys need to add anything to that? Was that a hand up? Yes, Woody, good.
Yeah. Can I tell you of an experience that happened on my last course that just proves how the solid white line system works and how people's minds maybe get affected by blue light driving. Okay, and I was with two trainees, and we're driving down a solid white line system. And a few moments later, one of the driver says, "I can hear a emergency vehicle coming." So I said, "Keep going, just keep going." There was an articulated lorry behind us, and I said, I couldn't find where the ambulance was, so I'm looking, or the vehicle was. So I'm looking in my mirrors, I'm trying to see. I can hear it coming. Next moment, she said it's next to me, and it was literally coming up next to us. So we're going down a hill, 50 mile an hour, because it was a maximum speed, to a right-hand bend with an ambulance overtaking us. And that kind of shows the emotion that might have been going behind that driver's mind, because that was extremely dangerous. And in the end, we had to brake really hard to let the ambulance through. Okay. This was all on camera and got reported to the driver training unit because it was so serious. So also what we're trying to do is train people to, you know, that emotion about their calls that's coming through will change the way they drive. And this was a really, it could have been a very, you know, different outcome. We hadn't braked hard. If there'd been anything coming around the corner, we would have hit it, or they would hit it. So sometimes what we've got to realise is the emotions that those drivers are going through, because we don't know what the call is. So the general public don't really know what the call is, and I think there's emotions on both sides, and it's a dangerous mixture. You know?
Totally agree. Yeah. I can only imagine. Kim, would you agree with that? Having all those years of experience.
Well, thanks. All those years, yeah. Well, first thing, I've got a question to ask first, because I'm intrigued to know, if modern day blue light training, do the driving courses, do you use lights and sirens as part of the training, or do you drive without those? So can I get somebody to answer that first, and then I'll go back to my point?
Go ahead.
Yes, for police, we run the standard response course as a 3-week course for initial drivers. That's somebody that's just coming in first experience for blue lights. First week is generally just getting to know the car, what it'll do, getting the basics of roadcraft in place. Week 2 is an extension of that. We start to bring in the use of some of the exemptions, especially for speed, so we can get them used to coming up, overtaking, dealing with public with no lights or sirens. They then have an input at the end of week 2, which is all about roadcraft, chapter 13, which is response driving, and then the rest of that week is done with all blue lights and sirens with simulated response runs.
Okay, now that's interesting, because that's and I clearly can only talk about the old days, just because there's a profound difference here in that my first advanced driving course was 6 weeks long, and the whole driving school fleet for many, many years were all unmarked cars with no blue lights or sirens, because you had to learn to drive as quickly as you could, but without the assistance of those things. And it was only in the last week that anybody let you anywhere near a marked car with blue lights and sirens. So you actually needed to learn to drive and react to people as fast as you could safely do it. So in other words, you developed the technique for driving fast without any assistance. So suddenly it all got easier when you had some lights and sirens. That, I'm just saying, that's the difference in the training. And the only other thing I'd say is that when we did do it, we were absolutely advised strongly to turn the blinking sirens off, because they were two-tone horns in those days, first time round, because you as the blue light driver will get carried away with the sound you're making and feel as though you have to drive faster and faster and faster to justify the noise you're making inside the car. So it was a psychological thing, even in those days, that somebody had thought of, to turn the things off when you could and back on again to overtake or approaching a hazardous situation. I'll stop rambling now.
No. The thumbs up, Kim, is because Terry, it's the protocol when people have something. So my thumbs up. Thanks, Kim. I know Ed, you had your thumb up. Ed, did you want to respond or agree or laugh hysterically at what Kim was doing?
No, and times change, don't they? But it's interesting to hear that even the psychological side of it was even thought about back in the 70s when Kim did his advanced. What I was going to say now is that there's like different stages of going through the training. So for our force, which is West Yorkshire, we do the standard response, which is just in Peugeots. There's nothing fancy about them. They are a straightforward Peugeot 308 basic tool anybody would buy, and then it has all the markings and sirens and audible equipment and everything put on it. So the power and the speed of that thing is like a wind-up toy sometimes when you've got 4 of you in it. We do, like Kim was saying, we do those first 2 weeks without any blue lights and warning, which is sort of going along the same path as that, what you went through. But once they've done that 3-week course, if they only want to go to advanced, they've then got a 4-week course to do. And the first 3 weeks of that are done without any blue lights and sirens, but that's in your over 2 litre category then. So the standard response is under 2 litres. So there's a difference in the way that the training's carried out now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ed. Terry, as soon as you sat back.
Am I allowed two questions?
Yes.
Just want to know, one's to Kim. I think it's a really interesting point about the louder the lights and louder the siren and the blue lights makes you drive faster. That's just like playing different types of music in the car and how loud it is when you're listening to music in the car. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree, because I was acutely aware of it when it was pointed out to me. And as I say, that I think, and I'm not absolutely, you guys are the professionals these days, I'm just an old kid, but the concept of learning to drive advanced driving and to make progress, as you know, there was kind of like when you saw that, now we used to call it the de-restriction sign, but of course it's got a proper name now, of the national speed limit, I think it's called now, but that was like a checkered flag. And the idea was that off you went now, just as quickly as you could. But you were required to retain smooth control of the car at the same time. So it was very much for the first 5 weeks, it was about getting to be one with the car. And I understand what you're saying, Ed, about the lower powered non-response driving, because you obviously need a standard for police driving full stop, and then another one for the response stuff. But it's just interesting how the sirens thing is, because I see what appear to me to be driving school vehicles 4 up with blues and 2s, And clearly that's what I'm seeing as part of an advanced course. So that's just interesting, because we didn't do that to the very last week of 6th. But that's the traffic. There was tumbleweed blowing around in the roads a lot of the time then. You got proper traffic these days, so good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Terry, second question.
Just going to clear up something Carol said, and probably all of you actually. So when we're trying to let you pass, you don't want us to stop. You want us to keep moving but slower. Is that right?
Ooh, who's going to go first? Woody, you haven't spoken for a while.
Terry, it's I think what Carol said, we want you to keep moving to the speed of the road. So for the conditions. What was that?
Was it with the, because Carol was talking specifically about the solid white lines, correct?
Yeah. If we approach solid white lines, what we're training ambulance drivers to do is look at the situation and turn the tones off first. And some of these solid white lines are going on forever. So we're now starting to look at the benefit of turning the lights off as well, because we're now at the speed limit. So we're driving along without the lights, because even the lights in the distance, if you look at an ambulance coming up and you can see the blue lights, you're going to start slowing down. So we're trying to encourage people to move to the safe speed of the road. So if the road is 50 and it's safe to make progress, we would like people to make progress. Obviously, if it's not safe, we wouldn't. What we're getting is these situations where people are getting slower and slower and slower. And so they're slowing the ambulance down. And then we're driving along at 20 miles an hour with someone that's desperate for us to overtake them. That's why we have to now sort of look at whether we turn the lights off as well as the sirens. But generally, we try to hold back. So we try not to put any pressure on the driver, if that makes sense. So we want them to go to the speed of the road that's safe for that occasion, without forcing them to go faster than the speed limit. Because again, sometimes we'll come up to people and they'll just tear off. And I'm sure we've all seen this as trainers, that people will see an ambulance and actually put their foot down to try and get away from it, which is equally dangerous. So yeah, we're trying not to affect their driving as much as possible. We're trying to be stealthily on the solid white lines.
So sorry, Fiona, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I just, because the drivers all know what they're on the way to, and it's something that Carol was saying, so I'm just reiterating that thing. As the driver, because different when you're training, but as a driver on a real genuine blue light call, you know what's at the other end. And I know sometimes I've spoken to trainers before and they've said they try not to look at what they're driving to, but I don't think that's always possible. And I think if you know, and surely Neil with the driving a great big, I can't remember how many tons of, 12 tons of fire engine, it's got to be different, where you know what you're driving to must be so compelling as a driver. I don't think, because I think there's that so the conflict of emotions there really does make a difference. Sorry, Terry.
So I was just saying, so Woody, when the time comes to overtake, the white lines disappear, it's safe to overtake, you'd like us to move over and slow down to make it easier for you, or do you want us to stop?
What we train our students to do, Terry, is we look for 2 signs that you give us that we know that you recognise us being there. So we're looking for things like a positional change, we're looking for a signal, we're looking for a speed change. But what we try to train our drivers is that we, and again, we try not to let one of our drivers overtake someone if they don't think they realise we're there. So we need 2 forms of recognition. It depends on the road, on how slow you go. It depends on the width of the road, and it depends completely on safety. So if the road is, a narrow road, then we're not going to go open. It depends on our vision. It depends on a lot of circumstances on how fast we're going to overtake somebody. But the best thing for us is that we're trained to go round you. You just make it as easy as possible without putting yourself in danger.
Yeah,
Cool. Thanks,
brilliant.
bud.
Neil, did you feel the same way, driving a very, very large, heavy thing?
Yeah, it's very much the same from when I was driving them a lot of years ago. It's very much the same. What Keith said as well, that we were constantly looking for them signals, slowing down, signals, brake lights, and you just got to be aware of that. To be fair, it's just the same. 12 tons of vehicle there as well that you've got to control, so it's different to the police and the ambulance slightly. Just going back to level of training for us, ours was 6 months probationary driving to and from jobs, well, 2 jobs with no lights on, or away from jobs or around the town, and then a 2-week intensive high-speed driving, and then blue lights and sirens on the second week, and the fire engine, just learning to control it really. But yeah, I totally agree with what Keith said, to be quite honest.
How long did you say learning the vehicle? 6
So
months?
6 months probationary, and then 2 weeks extensive.
Because you've got that slush factor, which I heard about recently.
Yeah, so you've got in the back of the fire engine, there's between 500 and 750 gallons of water. So once water starts moving at speed, it starts to slosh around. So you've got to take that factor in as well. It's not just it's a solid vehicle. There's a lot of things happening inside it as well. And if you get it going the wrong way, it can start to pull the fire engine to the sides. So you just have to be careful of what you're doing as well. And that's where other vehicles can affect you quite easily and quite quickly as well, if you're not prepared for them sort of things to happen. So yeah, so totally agree with what the guys are saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do use a slight silent approach going around country roads, because you never know if there's horses going to be around the corner. So it is being aware of what's totally around you at all times.
Yeah. A really simple example of a slush factor is, you know, when you're carrying a really full washing up bowl full of water and you're walking along, someone walks in front of you and you stop quickly, and that's fine. You've got that little bit that goes over, then it comes backwards, doesn't it? And the biggest bit is then the forward bit afterwards. So that, I think, is why there's, you know, when you stop something with slush in it, like a tanker, or it is a tanker, it's just a red and white striped one anyway, and then it will slush and it will keep bumping forwards. So often you get that awful thing.
Yeah, and it goes with the speed that the vehicle's travelling at as well, so it can be quite fast quite quickly as well. So yeah.
So and you said about the corners. So it's really interesting. I love that information. It's that you guys are looking for 2 signs, so positional as well as an indicator, as well as brake lights, I'm assuming. So you're looking for those things. Phil, go for it.
Right.
Question for the trainers. Am I right in thinking, or I think I heard once, that the emergency vehicle, if you're looking at them in the mirror, will position themselves in a way that will encourage you to go in a certain direction to allow them access to get by?
Who's going to answer that one? Ed, go for it.
Just unmute, I'd lost my mouse then. Yes, it's something that I've actually written down here, is positioning, that we'll use what most people might see as unusual positioning. C and B scene is something that I talk about a lot when we're with my trainees. And quite often the best position to see ahead is on the offside. So we will spend quite a lot of time, especially in the second week, going out there, sitting out wide on the opposite side of the carriageway, looking to see what we've got ahead. And especially coming up to left-hand bends, you may find emergency vehicles out in that positioning over the white line, trying to get the view, or in towns where you're coming up to junctions, traffic lights. We want to sit out wide to tell people that's where the empty space is. That's the space that we would like. And it's sort of asking the question early enough, and it's getting the police drivers to do this early enough so that people have then got time. Because what a lot of the trainees don't get in the first instance is just how much time it takes for the general public to actually see us. And then once they've seen us, they then need time to actually think, what do I need to do to help them? So by sitting out wide early and giving people plenty of warning there, maybe getting some turn changes in to alert people, that's where you will see what most people will think, blimey, that's the wrong side of the road. And that's quite often the response from the trainees to start with. I don't like it out here, especially when you get the steering wheel and you go sit out there. And it's a oh my God factor. But yeah, so it's really important.
So sometimes what you're saying, Ed, is sometimes it's for the purposes of a better view rather than an instruction to a vehicle. Is that what you're saying?
Both really. It's see and be seen. Yeah. So the police driver or the response driver, because this will count for all services, will have a better view ahead. But not only that, it's asking the question about to the public and saying, can you see me? Yeah. Have you seen me? I can see what's going on down there. That's where I'd like to put my vehicle. I'm asking early enough to give you time now to react and move over.
Yeah. Carol and Kim, I'm going to ask you in a second if you agree, if you need to say anything and just to back up what Ed's saying, say it in a second. But Phil, you had something, and then Terry might be saying the same thing.
Yeah, just a little follow-up question. What about bus lanes? Would you expect a car to go into a bus lane to let you go by, or would you use the bus lanes?
Is that to me, Fiona?
I think it's to any one of you guys. So as soon as you're unmuted, Ed, go for it, and then we'll ask the others.
Yeah, the one thing I get across to my trainees is that the public haven't got an exemption for using a bus lane. So if they go in a bus lane, they're very likely going to get a ticket. Whereas if we have the blue lights on and we've got that, we've got a fixed, I don't know about the ambulance or the police or the fire, we have sometimes now we have a fixed blue light that doesn't flash, so that if we get flashed by a camera, that blue light is there to say that we're on a response room. So generally speaking, that ticket will then be written off because we're in the bus lane. So I always advise my trainees to take the bus lane because we can write the ticket off because we have a reason to be there. What we're looking for is the path of least resistance and making it safe for public as well.
Yeah, so no sudden changes. And this is the thing, this is the bit I keep trying to get across is we know what we want people to do, but the first thing is that people have a panic response. They have an emotional response first. And then they swerve and things. Yeah.
That's a really important one as well for the response drivers. We have to get across because what the public want to do is move to the left. Their initial response is to go left. If we're in the bus lane, what we have to be very aware of is the person suddenly thinking, oh, I can hear a sign, I'll pull to the left. They don't even look, and we're already there. So we had a very close, very near miss one time on a motorway doing that when we were coming down a slip road response, and that was in an initial phase pursuit one as well, different to the standard response. And this person just moved straight across in front of the subject car, and they ended up going down the hard shoulder to avoid an incident there. So it is something that we have to be very aware of, that public want to go left, and that sometimes is into other areas that we don't really want them to go to.
Terry? And I do remember Steve.
Just got a question from two attendees, the same question. What would you like us to do at traffic lights, red traffic lights?
Brilliant. Just before you answer that, guys, does Carol, Kim or Neil, anyone want to say anything in relation to what was just said? Carol?
Yeah, just with the positioning that Ed was just talking about, we also use the sirens to manage the traffic. So sometimes there'll be a certain point where we get out and then we then turn the sirens on when we want them to stop. So the sirens are not there just to be on all the time. We do actually use them to manage the traffic, especially at red traffic lights, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Well, you can start. Oh,
do you want me to start talking about that?
Just in 1 second, Kim, was that
okay? Kim,
something about this? Yeah, Kim, unmute yourself, and then we'll go Carol. Yeah.
Just very briefly to say to Ed and the others that that's exactly the offside positioning. Perhaps for quite a long way, the vehicle will sit there to keep a good view and only go when they're absolutely sure. So it does look a bit peculiar, I realise, to the vehicle that's being overtaken, but that's the best place to sit quite often. And I can remember alarming my parents when I was just driving myself, but it just became habit that when you're looking for an overtake, that's the best place to sit. But it looks a bit odd if it's not been considered. So, well, nothing's changed. That's good.
Yeah, really good. Just before you go, Carol, Steve, you had something to say, and it might have been about that.
It was just something that Ed said, and I think as instructors with learners, I think the very first battle that we're kind of fighting is that conditioning that we've had all of our lives, really. Every sort of person has the same conditioning. I think that siren noise is designed to ramp up anxiety. It's designed to make you think. And that's the first thing, as Ed said, trying to combat that knee-jerk reaction of, I've got to go that way, I've got to go that way, not even thinking, not considering. And it just, the way Ed said that, it just kind of really struck. That's the first, to me, purely my thoughts, that's the very first battle we have to tackle with learners around blue light, how to react around blue lights, I think.
I think that's more important. I think that's more important than what you actually do, because in every situation, it must be different for you guys. Surely anybody on a blue light call, it's got to be different. And anybody who's driving a vehicle, it's got to be different in every single situation, because you've got the different traffic, you've got a different situation each time. It's really difficult. So I think the knee-jerk reaction, absolutely. Lost. Woody, was it about this or was it something else? It was this.
Yeah,
Carolyn sick.
The same thing. I mean, we use something called red mist, which I'm sure anyone who's looked at roadcraft will know what red mist is. And it can be it's a psychological reaction that you have. And it could be the driver of the ambulance, the police car, the fire engine. And it could be the reaction that the person has, and it just depends on past experiences. It depends on lots of other things that go through their mind. So when people get they get that emotion, they might have already had an experience quite similar where they, sometimes that people get bullied out of the way. That happens as well. So you might get this kind of a negative effect of it as well. But generally, we try to look at. One of the things I like using is the word we're herding sheep. We are the sheepdog. So wherever we put the vehicle, people go the other way. If we put it in the near side position, generally people go back out to the offside. If we put it in the offside, they come back in. So where we position ourselves, if you see an ambulance coming up behind you, wherever it's positioning itself, you want to be going away from that position or staying where you are. But people's minds react differently, and we've had situations where you may have 2 or 3 vehicles that are pulled up, but there's one in the middle that's not quite pulled up, and then he overtakes the one that just as you're about to overtake. So, people, I expect the unexpected is very good. But I think people just have to sort of, if they see an ambulance, my advice would be take a deep breath, calm yourself down, don't worry. We're the ones that are trained to go round you. You just make it easier for us, but don't try to get out of the way of us really too quickly, because we can cause crashes with other people, particularly at lights and so on.
Brilliant. We're talking about the lights in a second, Carol. Sammy, you were saying about a thing. Is it a new question because we're going for the red light? Is it about this?
Yeah, well, come to me when this is finished.
Okay. Well, we're starting a new subject and then I'll come to you. So the Facebook one, yeah?
Well, the Facebook one, I'll just spill it. Anybody who was an ADI before being a blue light trainer or is both, what one thing would you change about the way you used to teach learners, not necessarily regarding blue lights?
Brilliant question for the end. Brilliant question for the end. Yeah, that's a really good question for the end. Also gives you guys to think about it. So, yeah, what one piece of advice? I'm going to ask all of you guys that have experience as blue lights, what one piece of experience, yeah. So, nice. Carol, I think it's down to you to start the ball rolling with with the red
traffic
light thing.
lights.
Red traffic lights, and then
Okay.
we'll go. Guys, can I remind you, put your hands up if you've got something to add to the red light, blue light, red light, red light issue.
Okay,
Carol?
so red traffic lights, that is one of the exemptions that ambulance, police or fire engines do have, which is treating a red traffic light as a giveaway. So one of the things that the emergency service don't want you to do, and that is to actually go through a red light, because you are actually breaking the law when you do that. So it's quite interesting, because I've been in the police and I've been in the ambulance, and you do see a lot of different things when you come and approaching red traffic lights. I've seen a lorry driver reverse, go on the off side of the red traffic light and then turn right through a no right turn. So from experience, we really don't want you to go through a red traffic light. Just stay where you are and stay calm, because as the emergency response driver, what they should really do is hold back, switch everything off so that we don't push people, because that's the last thing we don't want to do. But you do see vehicles going over the white lines, and that is their discretion at the end of the day. So my advice on that is just to stay where you are, and also don't mount curbs, you know, the high curbs in cities and that, just to part the waves. Don't mount the curbs, just wait till the lights change to green and then facilitate your progress safely there. But I wouldn't go through, but don't go through red lights, no. That's
Brilliant. Woody, Ed, Kim, Neil, any other additional things? That's just it, isn't it? Same. Yeah. Woody, was that a?
Yeah.
Woody.
I talk to people about the red lights, and people think that they're justifying themselves by going through it, and it's called noble. It's a noble cause. So when you see an ambulance coming, the first thing is again, you go into your experiences and think that could be my mum in that ambulance, and they will take dangerous risks. I've actually seen people go right through a red light junction in front of us when we've not even got, we've turned all the equipment off and we've come in slow, and they've seen the ambulance coming in, they've just gone. So people's, again, it's this emotional thing. It's the you know, it's GDE stuff, really, isn't it? It's about the way people are thinking, and you know, don't try and think that if anyone does go through a red light and causes a crash, then that ambulance has got to stop. So therefore, that call is now going to be diverted to another one, and I'm sure it's the same for the police and the fire brigade. Am I right, boys? Yeah. So you're not really going to help out if you cause a crash.
Yeah. GDE that Woody just mentioned there is the goals for driver education. Somebody, one of us, probably me, maybe Sammy, she's good at that sort of thing, put a link into one of the GDEs so people know what it is if they're interested. Ed?
Yes, just with the lights, basically the police or the emergency service driver will be looking at one of three options that they have to deal with the red light. As Carol said, it's red lights to us are one of the exemptions, and it's a stop or give way situation for us. The first thing that I personally, when I'm doing a response run, look for is go round. So I'm looking for the option of where's my most quietest route, what's the easiest way around that set of lights that I've got ahead of me. So as I'm driving down the road, if I can see traffic in front of me, I'm going to go to that offside position, which we talked about positioning earlier, and put my car out there saying, this is the space that I'd sort of like, and it gives me the best view down the road to that set of lights. If I position out there early enough, really, what that's saying to that traffic down there at the lights is stay still, don't move, I'm going around you, yeah? So it's getting that message across as early as possible to stop that panic that we're talking about. And one of the main things really is when, if your ADIs can look at what the car's doing. What sort of speed is it coming in at? It should be coming in at a fairly low speed, like I said earlier, because people need time to react. The other thing is, if it's a red light we're approaching, if that red's on red, who's on green? So where's our danger coming from? And it's looking for where that danger is coming from. It's the view that is the most dangerous view is the one that you can't see through. And that's a brick wall, a solid hedge, big lumps of trees, parked vehicles, HGVs, those sort of things. And it's what is that hiding? And Carol mentioned it earlier, it's about that ability to be able to stop within the distance that you can see to be clear in front of you. And the car should be bringing their speed down to be able to deal with that. If go around is out of the equation and there really isn't an option there, and that's usually where you've got like the dual carriageway situations where you've got a solid barrier. The second thing we're looking at is parting the waves, and that's going through if we can. There are times then if the volume's so heavy, there's nothing we can do, and at that point you should see fairly early on that and this is where the use of mirrors and identifying where the direction is that it's coming from. If it's coming from behind, is just don't do anything. If you can't move out of the way safely, and that's without going over that stop line at the front, you know that stop line still means the same. It means don't pass that line while that red light's on. So the car should then be turning lights and sirens off and holding well back, and you'll see them sit quite well back sometimes, and then maybe take a central position defending that position that they're in. So again, it comes down to thinking, well, why is that car in that position? So that's the three options that we generally look through: go around, go through, hold back.
The thing that we all forget is, because we think we don't want to slow the emergency services down. We don't want to slow you guys down. I've got you, Sammy. I'm coming to you in just a second. We don't want to slow you guys down, but if I'm driving my car at 30 and the blue light decides to do 35, they get to 1 mile, you know, we both drive a mile, I do 30, I'll get there eventually. If Ed's driving his blue light vehicle at 35, it's only 17 seconds that he makes up. So where we slow drivers down, we slow the blue lights down temporarily, it's seconds, and yes, it is urgent that they get there. But if there's a crash, that's a very different thing, because Kim's sitting in the ops room, which he didn't tell you he also did, directing traffic, has got to send another vehicle. You've got to choose which shout does that vehicle now go to. So it's 17 seconds difference if they're only doing that, but it's hardly anything.
Yeah, that's a really important one, and I've written down here on my notes progress. If the car's turning its wheels at 3 miles an hour, we are making progress. We don't have to be doing 103 miles an hour to make progress. If that car wheel if those wheels are turning, we're making progress. So that's what we trying to work in the early stages, is getting people to recognize that slowing down early can actually, it's a tortoise and hare situation. Yeah. You go slower and you make more progress. We have a stretch around Leeds that we can use on a ring road, which demonstrates that really well. And people are astounded by just reducing your speed is actually quicker than going fast.
So that's something we can try and convey to new drivers, that it's actually, and it's not just blue lights, it's us and use of speed. That so it's one of those things. Kev, hopefully you're writing that down. Thanks, Ed. Sammy.
Yeah, the question about the red light has been answered now on Facebook, but there are a couple of Q&As. If you'd like me to go to one of them, it's been there for a while now.
Yep.
So it's from Richard, and he says there's 11 million deaf or hard of hearing people in the UK. This may well affect the way people react to emergency sirens. How many ADIs or emergency service trainers cover the issue of other drivers being deaf and the possibility of not reacting as we expect them to in these situations?
Ed will come in a second. The thing is, usually if someone is deaf or hard of hearing, they usually use others. They are usually the ones that are in the mirrors the whole time. They'll probably, in my experience of deaf and hard of hearing people, they respond visually to make up for what they miss. Because if someone's trying to attract their attention, just as you know, in a room, they're very good at that peripheral kind of vision. But that's, you know, I agree, Ed. And then if anyone else wants to say anything.
Every course we do from day one. Well, maybe not from day one, because that's the sort of low key stuff, but from week one, we talk about this sort of thing. And it's definitely built into what we call our response input, because it's not only the deaf and hard of hearing or blind, but mobile phones make people deaf and blind. You know, they're down here walking away and they just walk out in front of you because they've got their earphones in and they're watching the phone. So initially they are deaf and blind. And quite often it's a nightmare thing to deal with, because people that are actually deaf or blind, like you said, Fiona, they have an awareness that is greater than somebody that's on a mobile phone or being distracted by something else. And distraction is one of the biggest causes of accidents in driving. Yeah, some people are easily distracted.
Yeah, 93% of crashes, all the mayhem and the horror that we see, 93% of crashes on the roads of Great Britain are driver or rider error. The other 7% made up of things like heart attack at the wheel, unforeseen mechanical failure, and the other thing, a tree falling on your car, you know, windy weather. So, 93% driver or rider error. So, yeah, nice one, Ed. I've forgotten where I'm going next. Anyone else? Neil or anyone else got anything to add with the information so far? Neil?
Yeah, just going on that deaf and blind, I had personal experience of that, to be quite honest. I was attending a shout in a fire engine, and there was a lady on a pedestrian crossing, no idea that she would be deaf or blind, and she just stepped out in front. So there had to be severe action. And I just wanted to make sure that whether it's still the case or not, we are exempt from certain things, but we're not above the law. So if you do happen to kill somebody at that point, you are going to be prosecuted for it. So it's just being aware of that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I happen to know from delivering speed awareness courses that certain, like the ambulance service, we get people attending that are on a blue light shout, and they get a ticket because they're driving a vehicle that is not exempt from excessive speeds over. So some of the vehicles, even though they're blue light, obviously not Ed and the police, but some blue lights do have exemptions about, and it's authority based. I think it's local authority based. So sometimes they're attending even though they are on a blue light shout because they're over. So sometimes, you know, you might see a driver going, well, come on, you can go as fast as you like. And some of the vehicles cannot. So they cannot break a speed limit to go around you. So that's just something I've heard of. I don't know if we're going to get all the questions answered because we're coming up for the hour. We've got loads of questions left. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Hands up who thinks there's room for a blue light special part 2. I don't know. I do. I'm in favour of a blue light special part 2. Rather than try and risk it, and I'm hoping the attendees and anyone out there on Facebook agrees that there's much more in this. And I'd rather do a thorough version of this. Yeah, coming to you for a summary, I think, Kev, shortly. Can anyone make notes if there's anything unanswered or if they want brought up, especially you guys, the blue lights experts? I think there's more value in this. We will cover it again, and I'll arrange it, and I'll try and liaise to get all of you guys back here and the others, because the others haven't had their input as well, because we were expecting some others. Kev, can you start your summary, and we'll add that one piece of advice thing. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but let's do Kev's wonderful summary.
Right, where do I start? It seems such a long time ago, doesn't it? I've never written so much in my life. It's been brilliant. I've missed some of it because I've been making notes, but I mean, it's been such an insight into, you know, seeing how they train, what they can do, what they can't do, what they expect us to do. So thanks, guys, much appreciated. Right. Blue lights and drivers of blue lights and the trainers, get them to think about what they're thinking. And Fiona mentioned something about getting them the gap in knowledge and information in what blue light drivers do. So Kim's just introducing Kim again, but he done the cars, the bikes, and also helicopters. That's quite interesting. Carol targets thoughts and feelings of the learner when she's training them, and also raises their awareness. Woody does understanding regulations, obviously loads more, but just a couple of things, but blue lights and what they can and can't do with the regulations. And Ed was getting across the differences between the police and the ambulance, tandem response, and getting people to be aware of that second responder, because most people think it's just the one police car, not two. Blue lights can respond without lights on as well, as mentioned as well. So, you know, be aware that they might not just be a blue flashing light and sirens. Fiona mentioned fight, flight, or freeze people. You know, they normally in the car, that's what they tend to do with their emotions. And there can be two tones used to raise awareness of the actual responder coming towards them, was what Ed said. So then we moved on to white lines. What do the emergency services want us to do if there's a solid white line in the middle of the road? And they said, just keep going, is the key message there. Blue lights can't go round the solid white line either. So they want us to keep moving and not stop on bends. And they will overtake you when it's appropriate. And Woody mentioned he trains the emotions to make them so they don't take over their drivers. You know, so he trains them with the emotions of what might be happening. And Ed and Kim mentioned the type of training they do or used to do. It was a 3-week course for police, and a 6-week course used to be before that. But it was interesting to notice the psychological effect while driving is still there. So it was taught before and it's still taught now. So that's quite interesting. And they mentioned the position of the car or the ambulance. And it gives the blue light drivers a clue to what you're doing and what you want them to do. So they'd be positioned more on the offside of the vehicles. They might actually be on the wrong side of the road, which might give you a clue of what they're trying to do. So be aware of the position of those vehicles and the speed of them as well. And they're trained to overtake, and if they are unsure, they won't, hopefully. Fire engines have a live load, was what I used to call it. And Fiona mentioned the slush factor. So you look at a blue flashing light, red fire engine coming towards you, he's actually got quite a lot of liquid in that vehicle, and it takes a long while for that to stop. So yeah, so be aware of that as well. Blue lights, positional changes of the vehicle we've mentioned, and Ed mentioned see and be seen is what they're taught. Normally go to the offside, can be the same time, and this gives them early warning of what's up ahead, but also tells us what that driver's intentions are as well. So look for these clues that these drivers are giving us clues sometimes with the speed of their vehicles and the position of them. So use that to see what that driver's trying to do for us. Bus lanes. Public can't go in bus lanes, but the blue lights will proceed in that bus lane if they have a reason to be there. And sometimes Ed mentioned sometimes the cars have a solid blue light on the front, so they can be seen because coming off if they get flashed. But as the general public, and what we normally do, if we're moving out the way, we tend to move to the left, which also causes problems to people. But they also manage the traffic. You know, we've talked about bus lanes. They will also manage traffic with their sirens as well. And if the sirens aren't on and the blue lights have gone off, that normally means they're giving you another clue of what their intentions are. We had the red mist, a psychological reaction based on past experiences. And Keith mentioned about them being the sheepdog and herding the sheep out of the way, so getting them a path through the traffic. But again, you know, if you're sitting in the traffic and you've got that blue light coming towards you, breathe. Get the students to breathe, assess the situations before they make that rash decision. So that's one of the things that we can teach our learners. The contentious issue of traffic lights, red traffic lights and stop lines. Do we stop or do we go through them? The blue lights have an exemption to go through them. We don't. Stay where we are is the information we're given. Don't mount curbs. What we also don't want to do is we don't want to be part of a crash as well, because that's going to hold them up even longer. And again, the speed of the vehicle, if we're sitting at red lights, the speed of that vehicle approaching us from behind is going to be a clue for us to know what they want to do. And there's 3 steps that Ed teaches, you know, when they're approaching things like this. The first one is, do they go round? Do they go through? Or do they hold back? So they'll be making those decisions on approach to red lights for what they're teaching. In response to progress, and we believe we might be holding them up if we don't go through. If the wheels are turning, they're making progress, even at 3 miles an hour. So they're still making progress rather than being stopped. And again, we can teach our drivers or our learners this as well, rather than stopping all the time and then moving. Sometimes it's easier just to crawl up to things, make sure it's clear and then go. That can be quicker. And right at the end, we mentioned distraction cause crashes. You mentioned 93% of crashes are driver error. And again, this is what we want to be teaching people. What's going through.
Fantastic. I can't believe that went really quickly, guys. And I know because we started running late, so I've taken the executive choice that you guys don't mind hanging around for the extra minutes. I'm going to liaise with everybody that is one of our experts. I know, Sammy, that we were going to ask for a tip each, but I think we'll have to just wait for next time. So if you can come next time, please remember what your tip is. And I'm hoping, you know, I know there's a value to that, but I just think we need to let everybody go. I'm going to stop the recording on Facebook shortly, but we will have part 2. I will post it. I'll use the same backdrop, so if anyone wants to catch part 2, I'll do that, and I'll add a bit that says it's part 2. Guys, you newbies, Kim, Woody, Ed, Carol, and well, Neil's here every week anyway. You guys, can you come back for another one? Can you put your hands up if you can come back for another one? Thank you. Just checking, because it would be nice to see. And then Neil, if we can make sure that your guys can come in as well, because, and I do apologise, there was a bit of a problem, tech problem. So why don't you, Blue Light Special Part 2 will be announced shortly. Why don't you, number 18 will be on the 9th, so Tuesday the 9th. Why don't you mind your